Welcome back, guys, and time to do that part 2. We're gonna have to see if this turns into a part 3 as well, how long I go. This is part 2 of my first impressions video, and the first one, which I'll throw a link in the description below, and I'm trying to prop up, I apologize, the notes that I've made. The first video was about the automated manual transmission. I'm gonna have to do a follow-up on that because obviously I've driven it more than just a week. But I've now had this truck for 2 weeks, and part 2 of this video, as I stated in that video, was I wanted to discuss Freightliner versus International and my initial thoughts and feelings on this truck in general. And this is my second try at recording this video. And when I started it the first time, I want to make a general statement at the beginning. I want to make 2 general statements. First of all, spoiler alert, in general, I like this truck. So I'm going to go through a bunch of things, and that's the second spoiler alert. This may come across as one of the more negative sounding videos that I have on my channel. I'm not sure there's any 2 ways around that, but it is what it is. I have to do some background discussion about Freightliners and the ordering process and some of the stuff that happened behind the scenes that I didn't cover in my earlier videos about a lease and ordering a new truck. I know I talked about the fact that Freightliner is the only option currently that Success Leasing and therefore Prime has if you want to order a lightweight truck. So I know I talked about that, but I need to go back, and this also covers a couple of comments that people made. Lightweight trucks. So obviously I've done several videos about new truck revealed, first impressions, talking about the end of lease on my other truck, all that stuff. And I've gotten several comments, why do you have a lightweight truck? For those of you that have watched this channel for, boy, I started doing videos almost 4 years ago now. Guys that have been following along for a long period of time know the reason. I also wanted to touch on another topic that's come up, a few questions. Folks have said, that's a beautiful truck, but it's not a 2020, it's 2017. So those are the 2 topics I want to address and kind of go into some of the background. So I know I'm already getting long, but I need to address these things before we move on to my impressions of the truck. And unfortunately, some of that gets into some of the things that I'm frustrated about. So let's first of all go, why do I have a lightweight truck? I have a lightweight truck because I do the Prime Decatur, Indiana, Bellevue, Ohio tanker dedicated account. The contract that Prime has says that we have to be able to run 50,000 pounds of product. To be able to do that, we have to run what Prime considers a lightweight tractor. Prime's consideration of a lightweight tractor is something that weighs 16,100 pounds. That is with the driver and with all the equipment, and I believe it's with half a tank, 2 tanks obviously, so with 100 gallons of fuel, 200 total gallons. So it's 16,100 pounds is the requirement. So that's why I run a lightweight truck. I also don't sleep in this truck. On average, I probably sleep in this truck once a month. Typically, when I do, it's a situation where I go to run 2 loads in a day and I get stuck out of hours at the second delivery, or there are a couple of places. There are not many places that we go that are more than 5.5 hours, and you can do the math. You can drive 11 hours in a day. From Decatur, Indiana to there's a place in Dakota, Illinois, more than 5.5 hours. It's about 6 hours one way. You can't get there and get back. Those are the days that I end up sleeping in a truck. Even today, when there was horrible traffic on the tri-state I-294 outside of Chicago, it took me 5 hours and a couple of minutes to get to where I went today, and it took me closer to the average time to get back, about 4 hours and 15 minutes to get back from where I went today. So I'm still, with terrible Chicago traffic, well under the point where I am back in Decatur and will be going home for the night and not sleeping in this truck. So a lightweight truck is not a big deal. I mentioned this truck has a DD13 engine. It has the 13-liter engine. We run mainly Indiana, Ohio, Southern Michigan, Illinois, a little bit into Kentucky, and a little bit into Pennsylvania. There are not a ton of hills. There are no major mountains. So as far as pulling power, the 13-liter engine is more than adequate. So there's the background on why I run the lightweight truck. Now to talk about, this truck looks like an older Freightliner. And so I had a couple of people comment, that's a nice 2017 truck you have there. And this gets into some of the frustration that I have around this truck. There was some miscommunication about the availability. So first of all, Freightliner introduced that new body style truck in January of 2017. There's, in fact, 2 trucks over from me, there is a 20. Long story short, the new body style. So if you look at the Freightliner website, look at a Cascadia, you will see the new body style. That is what is being termed a P4 body style. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you drive out on a road somewhere and you see a Freightliner, it has a more angular, the nose is where the primary difference is in the aesthetics of the truck. More angular nose, hood, and then the grille has fewer slats and they're more widely spaced compared to what they're calling the P3, which is the older body style of Freightliner. So Freightliner introduced the P4, the modern new body style, in January of 2017. Prime started getting those into the fleet in the fall of 2017 as 2018 model year trucks. So that's where folks are looking at this truck and saying, okay, you've got 2018 trucks that are the new body style, so this is the old body style, so clearly that's a 2017 truck. Problem is, Freightliner did not start offering the lightweight, which is a 48-inch sleeper berth, 113 Cascadia, until this year. And they are still manufacturing the P3 in the 48-inch sleeper berth Freightliner 113. This truck had 36 miles on it when I picked it up. First of all, I ordered it, custom ordered it with LED headlights. I mentioned before the seat, and I'll talk about that. Really like the seat, heating and cooling in the seat. The headlights, love the headlights. But I ordered this truck in March of 2019. The manufacture date inside the door, so any car has the sticker with the VIN number and all that stuff in the door, and I'll post that. Manufactured 6 of 2019. It's also stamped on the fuel tanks, and I will also throw up Prime's own designation of this exact truck. My truck is 609093. You can see that in the video of new truck revealed, that Prime calls this a 2020 Freightliner P3 Cascadia. This is not a 2017. This is not a truck that sat around for 3 years. It wasn't made in 2016, sat around until I picked it up earlier this month, or at this point when this comes out, last month. It was manufactured a month ago. It was manufactured in June of 2019. It is a 2020 Freightliner. You can still order a P3. Freightliner Cascadia. But that's some of the frustration that I have, is that I wanted a P4. So to be honest with you, this is not a truck that I wanted. And body style is one thing. I mean, body style doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't, you know, they're nicer looking trucks in my opinion, the P4s are, than the P3s. But there are some specific things about this truck, the P3, that I really do not like. The dash probably being tops on that list. And I'll again throw in a picture of the entire dash. It is out of date, quite frankly. And it's a current edition of this truck, but throw in a picture of a P4 dash, a larger computer display, more diagnostic software. It's modern. It's much more up to date than the P3 style. One of my biggest frustrations on the dash is the DEF gauge, diesel exhaust fluid gauge. P3, it's the 4 green bars on the bottom of the fuel gauge. And on the P4, there is a second dial below the actual fuel gauge that is the DEF gauge. And on the International, you had 2 completely separate gauges. You had a fuel gauge and then you had a DEF gauge. I haven't had this truck that long, so I've only gotten DEF a handful of times. Quarter of a full tank equivalencies, in my opinion, are not adequate. The first time I got DEF, I had 2 bars out of the 4 remaining, and I put in 13 gallons of DEF. The tank supposedly holds around 20 gallons. That's closer to a quarter of a tank than half a tank. I got DEF today, and I put in 9 gallons, and there were still 3 bars. That's closer to half than it is to 3/4. It's not accurate enough for me. It may seem like a quibble, but I don't like it at all. I think it's a major. There's no reason to have something that's that inadequate. I'm trying to do all the negatives first. The storage in this truck, I knew it from the get-go. The storage in this truck is nowhere near as good as the International. There's, up above driver and passenger seats, the areas are smaller than they were on the International. There is no side storage like there was on the International. And these cabinets above the bed are much smaller. As I said, I don't sleep in this truck, so it's not as big a deal as if I did. But it is if I did sleep in this truck, I think it's a major problem. The turn radius on this truck stinks. It's nowhere near as good as the International. It doesn't turn as tight. Obviously that makes things more difficult when you're backing. So I don't particularly like that. There's a lot of space behind the sleeper wall going back, and it's a smaller truck, and I would guess that it's smaller than the International, so there's a lot of space from the back wall to the front of the trailer. And that's fine. That's actually kind of nice that you have move to kind of move around back there when you're hooking up you know, your air lines, your electrical, your 7-way, your hydraulic lines, if you're using the heat in transit. However, the steps are over here, and then the catwalk is way over here, so you have to climb up and then take a big step to the left. Just seems poorly designed. So those are probably the big negatives. On the positive, one more, cup holders. There's only 2 cup holders in this truck. The International had 3, and these cup holders are much smaller cup holders. There's really no cup holder for the passenger seat, whereas the 3 cup holders were basically right in the middle in the International. The 2 are basically right at my right knee on the driver's side. So if you're the passenger, now there is I think they call it a thermos holder that's in the floor, in the middle. And of course, without a gear shift, there's a ton of space, or there's a lot more space in the middle. That's neither here nor there, whether it's Freightliner or International. You know, you're going to have more space in the middle. But I always thought that thermos holder was kind of silly. Plus, it's closer to the driver's seat anyway, so now you got technically 3, and it's at an angle. It's not like a drop in a thermos. It's you can just lie a thermos in it. So you still don't have another cup holder for the passenger. On the positive side, I mentioned before fit and finish. The only way to compare it, the International I would call an economy model car on the inside. I mentioned in one of the previous videos, there are panels that don't line up, you know, just from a standpoint, you know, one would be sticking out, and there'd be a large gap. The fuse cover was where the glove box was in the International, and it never closed correctly. The switches in the International felt cheaper. I don't want to say that it's high quality like a Lexus or a Cadillac or anything like that, but they're more like a mid-range style car in this. The materials for the door handle, and they're nicer quality. There's no doubt about that. The lights are one that stand out in that fit and finish. The International has and I wish I had taken a picture of it, rectangular light, courtesy light right above driver and passenger. And it has a single black button in the middle that you push. And frequently when you push that button, it would kind of get a little sideways and then get stuck, so that you had a hard time turning the light off. And I'll throw in a picture of the courtesy light from the Freightliner. And you've got a low, a medium. Put both of those on, you've got a high light. So low, medium, high. And then the light all the way on this side is red. If you've ever, and maybe I'm talking like an old person, if you've ever worked in a darkroom setting with photography, you know a red light is fantastic when it's dark out. If you're driving down the highway and you drop something on the floor, or you want to pick something up, you know, from in your cup holder, and there's a little space next to the cup holder where you can, you know, put coins or whatnot. You want to pick something up from right here, you don't want to blind yourself with a white light. So a red light is very easy on the eyes when it's extremely dark out. You're not going to blind yourself, and you're not going to lose focus of the road. So the lights, I think, are simply fantastic. No comparison whatsoever between the lights in this truck versus the International. On the fit and finish sort of side, this truck is much, much quieter, much, much smoother handles, road bumps and noise incredibly well in comparison to the Freightliner. It just goes back to, it feels more like a solid vehicle, where the Freightliner, or the International, there was always something rattling. It was always loud. You could hear wind coming through somewhere. If you couldn't identify necessarily where it was. And then one thing, and this is not necessarily a Freightliner versus International, because as I understand it, this is a prime change that they have made in the last couple of years. I did a review on the 3-in-1 airline and 7-way hookup on the back of the truck. Prime has made that now a standard. All trucks are going to get that as a standard. So the fact that it came with that, I didn't have to move it from one truck to the next, was very nice. And those are so much nicer quality. I'm very happy that came with this truck. This truck also has a raised fifth wheel. That's another topic we can talk about, maybe a little bit more in depth. The fifth wheel and it's not significantly higher. It's maybe an inch or two higher than on the trucks that we've had before. It's something that should be standard in every tank truck. You just think about gravity. If you've got a level tank trailer and everything comes out the back, sometimes you're going to have ground that's not level and the nose of the truck is pointing down. You're not going to be able to get the last of that product off. Raising it up an inch or two, even if your nose is pointed down, if the tractor part is a little lower, you're going to have a better chance that the tail end's going to be lower because of the extra couple of inches. And then, of course, if it is lower, you've got an extra couple inches to drop that trailer down as well. So a raised fifth wheel is a very nice. There are quite a few places. You'd be surprised how many places you go where you would think if they're receiving liquid product that they should have a place that is pointed downhill, and they simply don't. So a raised fifth wheel is a very, very nice feature to have. Again, I can't credit the Freightliner for having that. As I understand, Prime is now outfitting all tank trucks with that, as they should have from the beginning. But the key there is, yes, this is a 2020 Freightliner. Freightliner is still manufacturing P3 trucks. And this, really, I wanted a P4. There was a lot of back and forth I went with between myself, Success Leasing, about what the possibility is. Are we going to be getting P4 lightweight Freightliners hopefully this fall? The problem is they're too heavy. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. They're a few hundred pounds, not a few 100,000 pounds. They're a few hundred pounds too heavy, so they don't fall under that 16,100 pound limit to be considered a lightweight truck. So there's some discussion between Prime and Freightliner about how they can lower the weight of the P4 to make it be used. And you have to consider, Prime orders thousands of trucks every year, and Freightliner wants to have Prime as a customer. We primarily have Freightliner trucks at this company. So if Prime all of a sudden came in and said, well, we're not going to be able to use Freightliners anymore, and so that's also part of the reason that they're still manufacturing P3 trucks, is because you have a company that's going to say, we'll purchase 3,000 trucks from you, but you have to keep making the lighter weight version of it. Freightliner's going to say, okay. They're not going to just hang a large company out to dry with no alternative. And that's the other problem when I said Freightliner is the only model that you can get as a lightweight truck. They're no longer offering, of course, International no longer offers the Pro Star. They've moved to the LT. There is a 48-inch sleeper version of the LT. but that is also too heavy and hasn't met specs for Prime. Prime has not offered a lightweight Peterbilt in probably over 6 years. There is, I think, one still left at this company, at least in Decatur. There is one guy who has one because he bought it when his lease ended 4 years ago. Has a lightweight Peterbilt, and they haven't found anything of any other options, whether it be, you know, Western Star or Mack or Volvo or Kenworth or anything along those lines. So at the moment, the only thing that you can get is a P3 Freightliner Cascadia, which, yes, is a 2020 truck. So there you go. First thoughts on it. Overall, I like the truck. It has its nuances. You're never going to be 100% happy with a truck. There's going to be, you know, I wasn't 100% happy with the International, even though it had better storage inside, it had a better turn radius. As I noted, the fit and finish wasn't fantastic. It was loud compared to this truck. So I liked that truck, but I also like this truck. I do wish that I had the nicer dash. I do wish that it had the more modern styling, but you know, I'm not gonna complain and quit Prime because I don't have the modern styling and the more modern system. Overall, I am a happy driver of this truck, and I do want to thank Northern Michigan University for sharing the video and the photos of this truck on their Facebook and I think Instagram. They shared it on there as well. But I want to thank them for sharing and getting my video out there. So that's what I got for you this week. Just kind of first impressions after 2 weeks of this truck versus the last one I had. Still do plan to do, I purchased a new product that I didn't have in my last truck. I want to do a review of that. I'm going to revisit automatics at some point. As I've gotten a little more familiar with it, I've tried some things, and we'll talk about that as we move along. Of course, if you do want to come to Prime, click on the link in the description. It takes you right to the application. If you have any questions or comments down below, you can ask questions. I'll do my best to respond, or you can send me an email at the email in the description as well. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys next time.